Welcome to the Demon Huddle presented by Cross Financial. I'm your host, Jason Pugh, along with Northwestern State football head coach Brad Laird. We're about to dive into the first episode of the 2023 season, which started Saturday night in Lafayette. And Coach, you were talking before the show, good travel down there. Not the outcome you wanted, but as we've talked about a couple of times since then, there were things you took out of there that were positives for this football team.
No doubt. That's what I saw live and what I saw on film was true. I thought, over the course of 4 quarters, I think consistency is going to be a key moving forward because in all 3 phases, man-to-man, we showed what we're capable of doing against a good football team that, you look over the course of the years has, been to several bowl games the last few years. Last year, with a tough game against Houston. But, there's a lot of positives to take out and encouragement for this football team moving forward.
How weird is it? Because oftentimes coaches will say, well, I need to look at the tape. So is that something you don't often see, that what you saw from your vantage point Saturday night and then from the eye in the sky was the same? A lot of times you'll see things that you may have misconstrued during real time, but how weird is it to see, or is it more common than we think, that what you see Saturday night shows up Sunday morning?
It varies. There's things that you're going to miss. That's why we film it, to be able to go back and correct the mistakes, maybe see something that we didn't see during the game. But just the feel of the game was kind of how I felt after going back and watching it. And usually what happens, it's usually not as good as it seems, and it's usually not as bad as it seems. It's usually somewhere in the middle, and that's where it was.
Well, in the middle, you got some positives. We talked about those a little bit. The turnovers were such a big thing. It was something you harped on all through spring. I know Coach Glosser, the defensive coordinator, harped on it all spring, all fall, and it showed up. You got 3 of those, and that's the good. The needs work is turning that into 7 points instead of 3, or in a couple of cases, or in one case, 0.
Yeah, and I think, first, that's a credit to the staff and the players. Coach Bo Blair, offensive coordinator, and Coach Glosser, defensive coordinator, really eyeballed that as something, knowing that we needed to get better. Going from dead last in FCS last year, it was a focal point during the spring, a focal point during fall camp, so it was good to see it come to fruition, with 3 takeaways, 2 defensively, and then 1 on special teams, and then 1 turnover. So to be +2, now to take that next step. What is that next step is, out of the 3 takeaways, we got 2 field goals. So, we got to be able to convert into points, but, now we need touchdowns instead of field goals. But, 1 step at a time, so it was good. Great job by the players and coaches emphasizing that.
Always a challenge when you step up a level from FCS to FBS. There's the 22 scholarship difference, which typically means you have more depth at the quote-unquote larger school. When you play these teams back-to-back, what are the gains you get out of these games?
Well, for us, they're huge gains for the simple fact of, just ready to go out and compete against somebody else. And you learn so much more. I know this is pretty obvious, but you learn so much more when you're able to go out, play a different opponent that does not see you every day in practice. And then be able to come back and evaluate what you're able to do in that setting, because, what you do find out is you see some guys that are, you call gamers, that step up, when it's time to play. You may not necessarily always see that in practice, but there's so much, to gain. And, you talk about depth. I thought our guys held up. That's a credit to Coach Smelzer and his staff. I think we had 2 guys, maybe at halftime that had to get IVs that came back and barely missed a play. So, through the lightning delay at the beginning that held us up for about 30 minutes, our guys did a good job of managing that and being ready to play.
You mentioned Jason Smelzer. He's somebody you've talked about quite a bit this offseason. And for those who don't know, it seems pretty obvious the importance of a strength coach, but a lot of times people don't see that. What has he meant to this program just since he got here in January?
Well, I think the thing that most people may not realize is how much they spend with the strength staff. You think about all the times the coaches are on the road recruiting, coaches are at camps and not with the team. The strength staff is with them. So, whatever standards that you have, it's really getting honed in when those guys are with them. And I think just what he brought, not just from that standpoint, but, doing what our guys do and explaining, okay, this is why you're doing it. All right, if you're a quarterback, this is why you're doing this compared to a defensive lineman that's having to do this. And, the guys want to know, how is this going to help me be a better football player besides putting a weight workout on the board, hey, go lift weights. And it's not just about that. And then, being able to add the GPS has just been huge because, you look at guys Saturday that, from start of the game to the finish, 8,000 yards. Okay, well, as a coaching staff, how do we, did that affect that individual at the end of the game compared to the start of the game? So, those are things that Coach Schmelzer has brought to the table and has just made a big difference in our team.
He wasn't the only new face making his debut this year on the coaching staff. You've got 5 new assistants, and I know you and I talked about it before last game, and when you hired these guys, you are just extremely high on the staff as a whole because this staff really seems to be, for a staff that is somewhat dominated by new faces, has become a cohesive unit very quickly.
Great staff. I can't, from what they've done. One, it's good to be able to have some carryover with your coordinators schematically, even though there's going to be a few changes here and there. But starting with Coach Atwell, Jeremy Atwell, as you talk about a coordinator coming in, coaching the linebackers and being the special teams coordinator, the experience that he brings, as a defensive coordinator before, as a special teams coordinator before, as an assistant head coach, getting him back to Louisiana, his roots. And so, it was good to get him back. And, staying on the defensive side of the ball, Coach G, Chris Gistor, that came from Lafayette, one of those that nobody on our staff knew. And that's, can be very rare in this day and age because you want guys that maybe been with, trust. But man, he blew us away in the interview. And on top of that, there's a couple guys at Lafayette that I think very highly of, and they gave a great recommendation, and it's come true. So he has done a great job with our defensive line. And then here late after spring ball, being able to bring in Perry Carter. Perry's got experience, coaching and playing in college. He's got experience coaching and playing in the NFL, and so what he's brought to the corners, and to me as a head coach with his experience has been great. And then offensively, again, having the coordinator stay the same, Coach Washington coaching the quarterbacks, having him back, but being able to add a Boone Felt that just comes from a coaching family. His dad was a successful coach in the state of Texas. Has done a great job with the offensive line, and then Coach Armani Leonardo, who has prior experience with Coach Blair at a couple of different places. So, that type of continuity to be able to bring in. He's been a coordinator before. But just overall, they're great men. And they're great men that the parents of our players want them leading their young men because, yes, they're going to be better on the field, but more importantly, they're going to be better off the field as a man when they leave Northwestern.
You talk about coaching families. You come from a coaching family. One of those stops for your coaching family and your coaching career was in Ruston, Louisiana. Also, a pretty decorated high school career before coming here. You get to go home this weekend to play Louisiana Tech, and we got the coach answer yesterday. Let's get the Brad Laird family answer and how special this is to go back to a place that I know. Yes, Northwestern Louisiana Tech, the rivalry is what it is. It's what it was certainly decades ago. It was a part of your childhood with your father being on both sides of it. But to go home and to see family and to see people you worked with and coached with in a place that's very familiar to you has got to be pretty special.
Yeah, because I'm a big believer that everything's about the people and relationships. Football is looked at about wins and losses, but there's so much more that goes to it. And from the people in Ruston that accepted me not only as a player at Ruston High School, as a coach and athletic director at the high school. There's a lot of good relationships. So to be able to go back and see them and have them be a part of, this game. And when you talk about this game, because, my Ruston roots is very minute when it comes to the Louisiana Tech Northwestern rivalry that started in 1922. When you look at teams that we play, conference schools, Northwestern playing Louisiana Tech is one of those teams that we've played now. This 81st meeting, if I'm not mistaken, and you had 1922 to now, with 1937 and 1987 being in Shreveport. Since then it's been at Louisiana Tech, but a lot of history between the two schools, and that's what's going to be fun about it. And I'm going to talk to our guys about it and make sure they understand the history between the two schools. So as a coach here at Northwestern, to be part of that, I was in those games in Shreveport, and on both sides when I was, my dad was coaching at Louisiana Tech and now at Northwestern. So it's going to be a fun night back in Ruston.
Just no fair food this time. Maybe we can get a food truck out there to maybe get some connections back in Ruston and get us some food.
We're working on that, I can promise.
But it's not just you that has ties to Ruston High. You've got a couple of guys on each side of the line. You've got a Louisiana Tech transfer on the offensive line. And we mentioned Perry Carter earlier. He coached at Louisiana Tech. So, I mean, it's not just Brad Laird going about an hour and a half northeast, slightly northeast, that's going home to see good people.
Yeah, and that's what makes it fun. You look at two guys, Jordan McLean, offensive lineman that played at Ruston High, and most recently Christian Davis was on that state championship run last year. He's a defensive lineman for us. So, for them to be able to go home and be on the sidelines and have their family to be there is going to be unique, for them. Stevie Ballard is another offensive lineman that transferred here from Louisiana Tech. He may not have the family that the other two, but he's got relationships, maybe some guys on the team that he played with. And then Coach Carter, anytime, you invest so much as a coach wherever you are. And Coach Carter definitely did that with Coach Holtz on his staff and very successful run that they had. So for him, there's going to be, people in the community that he met and dealt with the time that he was there. So, there's always these side stories that go into it that are always fun to watch and as they, happen, during the game.
Well, Coach, thank you for your time. First edition of the Huddle for you is in the books, and we'll be back after this break. The Demon Huddle, presented by Cross Financial, continues here on YouTube.
Whether it's in the trailer, behind the camera, or on the air, NSU has a place for you. Learn the ins and outs of an ESPN broadcast while getting a full-fledged education in sports media or broadcast journalism. Northwestern State University, New Media, Journalism, and Communication Arts. Learn more at nsula.edu/newmedia.
Welcome back to the Demon Huddle, presented by the Cross Financial Group. Jason Pugh back here with Northwestern State Defensive Coordinator Weston Glosser, and second year, first chapter coach. So overall, we talked to Coach Laird, and he said what he saw Saturday night was kind of what he saw Sunday morning. Right. Was it the same for you?
It was. I mean, and we knew early we had some guys, needed a little adjustments we made. I think big lights, kind of atmosphere, things like that, playing a little bit out of character, but we really calmed down. The fumble recovery really helped calm the kids down, and we executed at a high level. Really, you take away a couple plays in that game, especially the first half, it's a different ball game for us. And so those are the things we're able to emphasize to get fixed this week moving forward, is eliminate those explosives. And it was a crazy stat I saw. I think you put it on there. I mean, 45% of their offense was on the touchdown plays. We eliminate that, and we're in great shape.
Yeah, anytime. Do you have a number for stat nerds like myself? Do you have a number of yards per play you want to be at? Because if you take the explosives out, the touchdown plays, you held them to under 4 yards a play.
Right, and that's big. Usually you want to be under that 3 mark, and that 3 mark just, to get them in a third down where you want to be. And so, because you're going to give or take a little bit there on that average, but definitely around under that 3 mark. But, like I said, that the explosive plays was something that we gave up and something that we've got to fix. And, them running the ball efficiently is what they wanted to do. We wanted to stop the run. I think other than the second play getting out and the quarterback run, we were able to do that.
Yeah, and it looked like those just happening, guys. You get waterfalled sometimes, and it looked like that. And Wooldridge coming back from a torn ACL, I guess you probably don't, you maybe not expect the quarterback run as much the first day out.
Right, no doubt. And, and that's something that definitely they hadn't really shown last year. They'd ran him a handful of times, the backups a handful. Number 2, one of their backups was more of a running threat, but definitely, had us there. If the safety adjusts right, our 3 technique, a couple things went wrong on that play. If we get one of those things corrected, I don't think it goes to the house. They're going to pick up a first down on it. But, definitely something, second play of the game that got out to the boundary, it's just simple motion adjust. Something that happens a little bit faster than it did against our scout team all week. And that's something you see and you calm down as the game goes. So I was glad to see our kids respond, though, because the second drive of the game, come out, force a 3 and out, which is huge, a great way for those guys to respond.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's good. You've got so many new faces over there. I think even just going back, you start to think, okay, well, this guy's back, and then it got fewer and fewer as you went down the line. But new guys, new chemistry,
right.
First time out, some of those things, it's good to see in game, not just your coaching staff make the adjustments, but the players take that from the whiteboard onto the field.
No doubt, and like you said, even the transfers in, some of those guys, it's their first game reps in a year or two. And so getting that rust off, getting the speed of the game back, to a live setting, the atmosphere was unbelievable. The student section behind the bench was awesome. And so them knocking that rust off, being able to get that playing time. And, the old adage in football, your most improvements come week 1 to week 2. And so it's exciting to step up to that challenge this week for our guys to respond, and we have another great opponent this weekend.
So you're a believer in the week 1 to week 2 jump?
I am, and it's just you're able to see things full speed and in those atmosphere, and to be honest, you see who can and who can't when those lights come on. Who can perform, who struggles with it, and so you're able to identify personnel as well.
Well, one guy who did perform, and it was a great play by a guy who had a great game near his hometown, Donovan Green, one of those interior guys that a lot of times people tend to overlook. Unless you're an Aaron Donald type, but a lot of times Donovan had an amazing game. We'll talk about him in a minute. But setting up Cadillac Roan with the fumble recovery, Cadillac stepping in, opportunity given, opportunity taken.
Right, no doubt, and that's something we preached that we did not do last year. Last year we really struggled at times capitalizing opportunities, whether the ball be on the ground, be an interception we can go get, and I thought our kids have accepted that challenge so far, and it's something we've got to continue to work. But Cadillac with the scoop right there, wanted it to be a touchdown. I did give him a little bit of a hard time about getting caught by a quarterback, but we'll leave him alone. I told him he was a quarterback in high school at Manny. I was like, you should have taken that thing to the house, triple option guy. So, but, definitely a huge momentum swing for us, being able to return that down to, I believe, the 15-yard line. And that really, like I said, calmed us down on defense at that point and let our kids go play fast after that.
Well, it's not easy to run in soup. It was humid. We've had it hot here, but it was a different level of humidity that night, I think.
There's no doubt, and it was weird because after the lightning delay, there's a little breeze, and about, a couple minutes in the second quarter, that breeze stopped, and it got hot down there. So, and I kind of heard Coach Laird talk about it, definitely our kids in the conditioning aspect. 2 of our guys on defense got IVs, and, but everybody else able to roll because we played, a lot of guys for a lot of snaps, just, keeping them rolling, letting them compete, and, it was good to see their conditioning there.
Touched on Donovan Green, the game he had, a couple of tackles for loss, a sack, the forced fumble. He's just steady Eddie, it seems like, or steady Dono, if you want to call him that. I know it doesn't rhyme, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but just a guy that seems to put his hard hat on and go to work every day.
He does, and, you look at a kid who actually walked on and earned a scholarship, and so he has that work ethic, that mindset of he wants to compete, chip on his shoulder, I guess you could call it, and he comes to work every single day. And, Donald's one of those guys you love to coach. I'll be honest, last year, my first year here, me and him were able to have a lot of conversations and get to know each other pretty well. And he's going to come every single day in practice and on game day, and he's going to work hard. And it paid off. I mean, he really, ripped around and punched that ball out and forced a fumble. It wasn't an accident. And, gave him a hard time, told him he hit it like Ray Gibson. Ray Gibson has some Hulk hands, and so, I told him he had those on for that play. But, great play by him, great heads-up play, and like I said, turned us around as a defense.
You get some of those for the sidelines, a little Hulk hands gloves.
No doubt,
for forcing
something
a
to
fumble.
celebrate. Yes, sir.
Well, we'll go to a completely different style. You talked about Louisiana Lafayette wanting to run the football, wanting to be a bit more pro style. You won't see that as much this week when you go face a Louisiana Tech team that's coached by one of the disciples of the air raid, Sonny Cumbie. So completely different focus for you this week, I would think.
It is, and they aired out a lot more. It's funny because I did hear Coach Cumbie talk about during the SMU broadcast, they said that they took his air raid card. So they do want to run the football more, which is why I said they took it, and they want to be physical, but they're going to spread us out, and they have some weapons. Smoke Harris, of course, that guy's special. You watch him in the return game, you watch him at receiver, he's a special player. They have, Cyrus on the other side, number one. He has some jets. He can roll in, but with that, they have a good stable of running backs. The quarterback transferred from Boise. You go back to the TV copy of the FIU game, and they talk about how special he is in the portal and what he did at Boise State, and you can see it. He can spin the football. He makes great decisions, doesn't make a lot of bad ones. I think first game he was getting a little bit of rust off, but he got that off pretty quick, and FIU was able to bring them back and win that game. And I think, we got our work cut out for us against these guys.
One thing that you did do, that again, in addition to forcing the turnovers, we talked about cutting down the explosive plays and what you were able to do when that didn't happen. But you pressured Ben Wooldridge a lot last week. Even though just a couple of sacks, but he wasn't able to set his feet. And I know the air raid is typically predicated on timing, so it's all about, it's like hitting a baseball, disrupting timing. Something, again, probably a focus for this week.
It is, and and I'll be honest, for us as a defense, it's a focus all year. And in fall camp, we do FBI meetings. We call them FBI meetings, football intelligence, and one of the ones we had this year was hitting the quarterback. And not even sacks, but just putting pressure on him, letting him know your presence is there. And that's something through 11 football games last year I did not feel like we did. And us as a defense, we want to be an aggressive style defense. We want to pressure. We want to make the quarterback uncomfortable. And I felt like 11 games last year, we did not have any success with that. And I think in turn that leads to takeaways. But to your point, Saturday, we were able, even when we didn't get there for sacks, to knock him around, to hit him, to put him on the ground. And there's a couple times, he's slow to get up. And as a quarterback, you don't like that. You go back and you watch the Netflix show Quarterback, even Patrick Mahomes, that bothers him. He's talking noise to the D tackle, but it gets in their head. And they start making throws a little bit quicker. They're on their back foot. They don't step into it. They start seeing ghosts, which is, what you always hear it referred to. And that's what we want. It really helps our back, and especially with our aggressive style of defense, with man coverage, things we do. And that's a huge point of emphasis of being able to put our hands on the quarterback. Even if you don't knock him down, let him know you're there.
Philosophically, you played quarterback. So, was that something that, and I guess you were probably right around the spread revolution in Texas when it was coming through, when it was becoming a more pass-happy state and a pass-happy system. Is that something you took from your experience being back there in the pocket where you don't want to be comfortable and you try to apply that?
It's just, I think, in general, human nature. It's survival. So once you keep getting hit, especially nowadays, our defensive linemen are a lot bigger than they used to be. And so when you're getting guys that big running through, these big linebackers now, it definitely gets in your head, and it's kind of survival. Now you see the great ones, it doesn't bother them. They're able to get hit and keep rolling, or you're running quarterbacks, but it's just kind of human nature. And same thing, I tell our guys all the time, we talk about 11 hats to the football. Even the running backs. Running backs, once, first guy's in, second guy hits, third guy hits. It gets hard to run the ball after a while. And it's just your body starts getting beat up, you get fatigued, and it mentally is going to affect you. And so really looking at quarterback and running backs, receivers, getting guys to the football, tallying on them when you get there, have reckless abandon. We're going to see some friendly fire this year from our guys because we're just going to throw it in there. But, you have to play. I love it. I stole this from Coach Atwell, special teams unit, but physical brutality. And that's what we have to play with every game. And our kids are really accepting that challenge.
Well, I know some people have termed intellectual brutality for some of the private academic-driven schools, but physical brutality, looking for some of that at Ruston on Saturday. Coach, thank you for your time. We'll be back with offensive coordinator Bo Blair in the final segment of the Demon Huddle, presented by Cross Financial Group here on YouTube.
Doug here. Does anybody have any other questions?
Welcome back to the Demon Huddle, presented by Cross Financial Group. Jason Pugh now joined by Northwestern State Offensive Coordinator Bo Blair. And Coach Blair, Chapter 1, Year 2 in the books. Kind of the same thing we asked Coach Laird and Coach Glosser, if I can get his name out. A lot of times you'll see things on a Saturday night and they'll look differently on Sunday morning when you get the tape. Was that the case for the offense this week?
There's some good, there's some bad. But the good thing about it is at the very end, they never gave up. They finished. Our last drive was a touchdown. Obviously, probably should have called it earlier. But the good thing about it is effort. There's some things that we got to get better at, some things that we got to improve at. But the big thing is the effort and not giving up. It was very important to me and very important to these kids. So,
you touched on it there, and we talked to Scooter Adams yesterday about it. When you finish with an explosive play, when you finish a game with a touchdown drive, how much of that is or can be a springboard into the next game?
Yeah, 100%. End on a high note. Talk about it. The kids rallied around it, got excited about it, and if you look at holistically of the game, if you watch it from the live and watch it during the game, you see that a lot of the offense stuff didn't click, but there were some positives. Running wise, I think we ended up with 3 tackle for losses, which is actually a lot better. Analytically, it's in a green. It's a good thing. Last year we had a lot more, so we improved on that. Just got to find a way to, execute on other parts of the ball.
When you look at it, you've got so many moving parts on this team. A lot of new faces, and maybe nowhere as much as the offensive line. Going back, I guess DeAndre Richard was probably the only guy starting this season opener that was anywhere near his current position last year. So that's a challenge, but the chemistry there is going to take a little time to build. Yeah,
I thought if you watch the first half, the old line, they played with the chips on their shoulder, and second half, but you watch pass pro, and they're cleaning up guys doing things that, I typically don't see them do, so I was super excited to see that. They did protect the quarterback. I thought UL did a dang good job of covering everything, and the O-line did a good job protecting the quarterback, so it was actually you got a win, but also a loss situation because they did a good job of covering everything. But you talk about new O-line and new guys being there, kind of moving parts. A lot of those guys are returners, but they did play with the chip on their shoulder, and I thought they did a dang good job.
Well, one of those guys that got his first start of his career was Kobe James, and he's a guy that has battled through a lot of stuff, and that's the type of kid somebody needs sometimes. You need to say, and look, this is, especially in this era, in the transfer portal and player movement, sticking it out and waiting for opportunity and then seizing it when it's given.
Yeah, Coach James is a great kid. Had 2 season-ending injuries, labrums, and then he had got a concussion, I think, and spring ball, and then he's an engineer major too, straight A student. So he misses some things sometimes, but that kid is a battler, very positive. Never heard a negative word at him. Never heard a lot of words at him either. He mostly keeps to himself. But you watch him, cleaned up a lot of people, plays with an instinct, and a super smart kid. Like I said, engineer major, so goes a far way.
Is there engineering that's applicable to offensive line play?
No, that's what I'm saying. So you take a kid like that who super smart, super cerebral, and simplify it down and just let him have fun. I guess that's where he releases all his anger. So great kid, athletic, and I like him a lot. So,
well, Braden Stagg's another guy that's kind of dealt with some injuries in the past. Started at center, thought he played very well, and mostly anytime you're in the shotgun as much as you are, you handle your snaps. That's the first thing, and didn't seem to have any issue with that.
Yeah, so Braden Staggs is definitely a leader. Has done a dang good job. He's definitely handling it well. I think he did great out the highest of all the O-linemen. He had 3 or 4 just great blocks where he cleaned some stuff up where I typically didn't do it last year, but he's doing it this year, so I'm very proud of him in there.
When you came in and took over the offensive coordinator role a couple of weeks ahead of last season, It was your first time really in that fall and spring, first time to see Scooter Adams. I think you probably heard of him before, seen what he had done in the spring of 2021. He has become, in your time as the offensive coordinator, he's become as explosive a receiver as he is a runner. What does his versatility do for you as a play caller?
Yeah, you try to put him in certain situations where he can exploit them. He's not a big back. Probably weighs about 180 pounds, but he's super athletic and he catch well. He could do things that you got to try to put him in certain situations. He's definitely helped us out. He had the injury bug a little bit last year, but he's super healthy right now, ready to rock and roll. Great positive energy, and people try to rally around him. So he's very explosive, very versatile. I'm glad I had him. I just wish he was healthy all last year to use him more. So definitely glad we have him.
He said he feels he's as healthy as he's been since that spring season before you got here. But can you see a difference in him?
Not only physically but mentally. You can tell last year when he was hurt, down. He is just a light. He's bouncing around, encouraging people. Those are things qualities he did not have in the fall, and those qualities are just coming out of him. There's other players coming to me behind his back talking about how great of a leader he is and encourage he does. And definitely, you take anybody. You take a football player or just anything you do in life and you take it away from you, your mental health is going to be bad. And what he's doing right now is awesome. So.
Well, it also gives them, I think, injuries, and we talked about it Monday with him. He's got no appreciation for the game because when it is taken away, same with Justice Galloway on the other side of the football, but when it can be taken away, I think you do maybe rediscover the love of the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's move ahead to this Saturday now. Ruston, Louisiana Tech. It's another FBS challenge, but week 1 to week 2, typically you see the most growth. I would expect you would like to see that from your unit.
Well, 100% would definitely like to see more growth. That's regardless if you win or lose, you want to see growth. You want to get better each and every day, whether it be running the ball, throwing the ball, whether it be just energy, just anything you do, understanding the game, you want to get better. I want to get better every day. So definitely want to see some growth, different style of team. UL was a 3-down team. Drop 8, or they're either coming. There's 7 guys in the box, but really after you drop back, they drop 8. So they do a good job there. And you got La Tech, who's total opposite. So they're a 4-2-5 team. Cover 1 last year, they're a big zone team. This year, they're a big cover 1. They got some cats. We want to see us project and get better for sure than the week before.
It's interesting to me when you talk about 3-man fronts, 4-man fronts, 4-2-5s, 3-3-5 stack, all that stuff. When you've seen Weston Gloucester's defense now for a year and a half, and it's a 4-2-5 look. Does that do anything? I know people operate differently. It's a base. The base is 4-2-5, but they may drop 8 out of it. They may do different things. Sure. But when you see a 4-2-5 every day in practice, in fall, in spring, does it? I don't want to say give you a comfort factor for calling plays, but you are used to seeing it. So there's got to be a little more familiarity with what you want to do against a defense like that.
You could be a 4-2-5, but running a million different ways,
right.
But it does help. It does boost some confidence for the team, for sure, seeing something. But, they do a lot of different things than Coach Gloucester does. But they got some cats now. Number 5, he's their DT. He's really good, really athletic guy, senior. Willie Roberts, number 1, the boundary corner. Lockdown corner, really dang good. I don't think they've in the past 2 games anyone's ever completed a ball on them. So they got some good players, and we got some good players. So we got to see. You got to try to take advantage of those one-on-one matchups, and got to try to cover up number 5 and see what we can do there.
All right. Well, Coach, appreciate your time. Thank you for coming in.
Yes, sir.
That'll do it for episode 1 of the Demon Huddle here in 2023, presented as always by our friends at the Cross Financial Group. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.